Work hard and you'll succeed. Keep your head down and you'll get the results. Hard work will get you far in life. That's what they say, isn't it? How many times were you given that advice growing up from people who had your best interests at heart? We all know the child who fools around in class, pays no attention, spends time playing, hanging out with their friends, and yet they make those exams look effortless. And then you've got the kid who keeps their head in their books, working all the time, missing out on playtime, and struggling to get through those exams. But they pass, they manage to pass. That was me. So I took on that advice, I kept my head down, and I worked hard. And it got me the results. So when I embarked on my career as an accountant, I continued to do what I'd always done, because it got me the results. And about 4 years into my career, you would have seen me sat at my desk in a large open plan office, brightly lit, as my manager, my finance manager, approached me. His name was John, in his mid-40s, always suited and booted with that air of authority about him. And he wore dark glasses and he had a dark beard, peppered grey, so it made him look quite distinguished. Leila, as you know, today it's my last day here, so I just wanted to catch up with you before I leave. So I want to give you some feedback first of all. You've been a great hire for the organisation. You've done really well, you meet your deadlines, you work really hard, you keep your head down. And we've been impressed with what we've seen. And I think back to our interview about 18 months ago, when you talked about your career goals and your aspirations. And having watched you over the last 18 months, I have no doubt that you can achieve those. You have the strengths, you have the capabilities. My concern, however, is this. What got you here is not going to get you to where you want to be. The problem is, people don't really know who you are. People in this organisation, the management, the leadership team, the decision makers. Because you keep your head down and you work really hard. So here's what you need to do. You need to show up, you need to step up, and you need to speak up. I wish you all the best. Have you ever had a time when you have received some invaluable advice, but yet you don't know what to do with it? Show up, speak up, step up, what's that about? I didn't know what to do with it. And later that evening, as I was driving home from work, I reflected on that conversation with John. And the biggest shock that I had was the realization that I'm invisible. I'm invisible in this organisation that I'm putting my life and soul into. I'm working all the hours, and people don't even recognise me. They don't know what I'm doing. And it was at that point that I realised I need to do something differently. So over the next couple of years, I embarked on a journey of exploration and discovery to really try and understand what John was talking about that day, what he really meant, so that I could become visible. And this is what I realised. Number one, show up. Show up is about being your authentic self, being you. How many of you know somebody, perhaps intimately, who shows up at work as a completely different person, who pretends to be somebody they're not and wears a mask? And why do we do this? We do it because of fears, of insecurities, of wanting to fit in. We do it because we have perceived expectations of what people expect of us in the workplace. And we're trying to conform. But here's the thing that I learned. People want to know the real you, the authentic you. Why is this important? There was a study carried out by Amy Cuddy, a professor at Harvard University. And what she found is that when we meet people, there are two questions that we ask ourselves. The first is, can I trust you? And the second is, can I respect you? Consider this, how many times have you met somebody for the first time and you really get on with them? They're a lovely person. You even feel like you connect with them really well. But there's just something niggling about, you can't quite put your finger on it. Intuitively, you feel like maybe you don't trust this person, or you need to keep them at arm's length, but you're just not quite sure why. Oftentimes, it's because intuitively, you know that this person's not being authentic. They're not being their true self when they're speaking to you, when they're communicating with you. Ultimately, we want people to know, like, and trust us. And my invitation to you is to show up from today onwards as the real, authentic you. And in addition, we must consider positioning. The thing is, our nation is a nation of people who shy away from sharing our successes, our achievements, our abilities. But the question is, if we're not going to speak up about them, who else will? So ask yourself who you really are, what you stand for, and what you want to be known for. Because ultimately, people are always going to be forming opinions of you. So would it not make sense to try and manage that messaging they're receiving from you, the perception they create about you, that first impression that they have of you? So being aware of the way that you show up, knowing what you stand for, and being congruent in the way that you show up and come across to people will enable people to know, like, and trust you, and not be questioning instinctively why it is they want to keep you at arm's length. And once you learn to show up, you want to step up. What do I mean by stepping up? I'm talking about confidence and presence. How many of you gravitate towards the people who exude confidence and presence? Who always have them standing out? They're always in your space. You'll always notice them before you notice the next person. And let me ask you this. If you're in a decision-making role and you needed to promote somebody, or you needed to assign somebody to an exciting, big new project, or to give someone a pay rise, would you be thinking about giving the person who exudes that confidence and that presence any of those things? Or would you be considering giving it to the person who shies away and has uncertainty about themselves? You see, I believe that having confidence is so incredibly empowering, and it opens doors for us that we wouldn't have realized. The challenge here is this. Men overestimate their abilities and their performance, whereas women don't. So would you agree that if you underestimate your abilities and your performance, that's likely to diminish your confidence, which in turn will influence your behaviors and the way you show up, which in turn will have people feeling uncertain about you. So when it comes to that promotion, if you're lacking certainty in yourself and confidence, why would you be considered for that role? And the reason this is important is because there is a lack of women in senior roles. They're underrepresented in most organizations, and we hear about it all the time. And in addition, there's ongoing discussion and debate about the gender pay gap. But here's the thing. Both of those things, the pay gap and the roles, the promotions, the senior positions, ultimately are based on having that confidence to get there or to ask for what you want. I was shocked to learn that 75% of women in the workplace lack confidence. That's a huge number. That was some research that was carried out by Glasgow University. And one of the biggest impacts of that lack of confidence was asking for the pay rise. My view is if we don't ask, we don't get. So my invitation to you is to step up and to ask for what you want, to ask for what you deserve. And once you step up, once you show up, then you get to speak up. So what do I mean about speaking up? I'm talking about having that voice. Having opinions and ideas, but vocalizing them, sharing them. Making other people know what you're about. It's also about effective communication. I've observed over recent years that the traditional water cooler conversation, in other words, the face-to-face conversations in the office, are being replaced by communication through instant messenger, phone calls, text messages, WhatsApp, anything else that's online or behind a telephone. Now, I absolutely advocate flexible working and remote working. However, it's important to remember that effective communication, the most effective communication, comes from in-person interactions. Because communication comprises of only 7% words, and the words are the communication that you use online and on the phone. In person, you get to bring in the physiology, the tonality, and that is what gives you the connection and the relationships with people, which is what we want. We want to build connection. We want to build and grow relationships and nurture them with people. And in order to do that, we want to look to do that in person. LinkedIn carried out a survey a couple of years ago in the US and found that employers' most sought-after soft skill was effective communication. So no longer should we continue to hide behind all the technology that we've been given, but to remember that we still need to speak up in person to people. In addition, speaking up is about standing in front of people, an audience, and sharing your ideas, your views, your opinions, and inspiring others. And yet, so many people have a fear of public speaking. Glossophobia, it's called. And this impacts people at all levels within organizations, up to management and leadership. The fear of public speaking is prevalent. But here's the thing. It's an irrational fear. It's something that we can overcome if we really want to. And so what that means is, if we choose to overcome it, we can then stand up and speak out and share our messages with other people. And by doing that, we get to potentially accelerate our career and our visibility. All the speakers you've seen today, and other speakers you've seen maybe at conferences, at events, in the workplace, I can guarantee that most of those people have overcome that fear of public speaking. I wasn't born like this. If I didn't learn to show up, to step up, and to speak up, where would I be today? I'd probably still be the accountant, keeping my head down and working hard and invisible. But instead, I've had the good fortune of taking on the advice that I was given, which has led me to have a list of achievements which include, over the last 25 years, having a very successful career and also delivering shy of $1 billion worth of business for one of the largest global technology companies. It was something I would never have dreamt of when I started out my career. In addition to that, I'm now a professional speaker, a published award-winning author, and a coach. And I left the corporate world a year ago to run my own business as a personal branding consultant. And I love what I do. So I'd like to leave you with this. Are you going to carry on keeping your head down, working really hard, and remaining invisible? Or are you going to be bold? Are you going to be brilliant? Are you going to step up, show up, and speak up and make the difference in this world and accelerate your career and enhance your visibility in the workplace and in your industry? My biggest learning from this is that anything is possible. Thank you.